You know that moment you wait for a reply? Not because you're desperate, but because you know you would have replied in seconds if it were them? That's how it started for me. It was late, 11:52 p.m. I still remember the light on my phone glowing in the dark room. I had sent a simple message, "Let me know you got home safe." Not even a heart, not even anything soft, just a line that said, "I care, even when you don't ask me to." And I stared at the screen like it would blink back with an answer. They never replied. And what hurt wasn't the silence. It was the way I still showed up the next morning pretending I hadn't noticed. That I wasn't hurt. That this was normal. Because I've gotten used to being the one who cares more. I told myself it's not a big deal. Maybe they were tired, maybe they forgot. Maybe I'm too sensitive. I always find ways to explain why they didn't show up, but I never stop to ask why I always do. Because here's the truth that no one really wants to say out loud. When you love someone, your standards get blurry. And when you're afraid of losing them, you forget to ask if they've ever really been there for you in the first place. I wasn't always like this. There was a time I knew how to walk away when something didn't feel mutual. But now, I chase crumbs like they're meals. I stay longer than I should because I believe maybe this time they'll notice. Maybe this time they'll say, "Thank you for showing up." But they never do. And still, I keep showing up, even when I'm exhausted, even when I know I wouldn't get the same effort back, even when it hurts, because somehow, in my mind, that's what love meant, giving more than you receive and calling it loyalty. I remember this one day so clearly. It was raining, just that soft, cold kind that makes you want to stay in bed. I had just gotten off work. My shoes were soaked, my shoulders hurt, and I hadn't eaten all day. But they called, said they were feeling off. Didn't ask me to come, just mentioned it casually. And that was enough. I got in the car, drove 45 minutes through traffic, didn't even change clothes. I showed up with their favorite snacks and a stupid movie queued up on my phone. I didn't say anything about my day. I didn't mention how heavy I felt. Because in my mind, they needed me more. That night, they barely looked up from their screen. Said thanks, but didn't mean it. Laughed at the movie, but didn't laugh with me. I sat there wondering how many times I'd done this. How many times I've picked people up with hands that were already shaking. And they never asked how I was holding up. You'd think I'd stop, that maybe I'd learn. But I kept doing it. Kept showing up in the ways I wish someone would for me. I kept being the first to call, the one who remembered birthdays, the one who checked in after bad news. I kept giving like one day someone would give it back. But they don't. Not always. And the truth is, some people don't even notice what you're carrying. They just get used to being carried. And by the time you realize you're the only one walking barefoot through the storm, you're already too far in. You've already told yourself it's love, when really, it's just a habit of not letting go. There was one night, I didn't plan to say anything. I just wanted to sit beside someone who cared. I was quiet, not mad, not upset, just tired. That kind of tired where you don't even have the words. You just want someone to notice that your silence isn't peace, it's surrender. I thought maybe they'd ask, maybe they'd hear it in my voice. But instead, they talked about themselves, their wins, their stress, their day, and I nodded like I wasn't slowly fading inside. It's strange, isn't it? How someone can sit right beside you and still not see you. Not really. They see your smile, your effort, your presence, but they never pause long enough to wonder what it's costing you. I remember I went home that night and cried in the shower, not the loud, dramatic kind. Just this slow ache that builds in your chest until it escapes through your eyes without permission. I wasn't sad because they didn't love me. I was sad because I kept hoping they would. I kept believing that if I just gave enough, if I just loved hard enough, showed up enough, stayed long enough, they'd finally choose me the way I chose them. But I've learned something brutal. Love doesn't always work like that. Some people will let you pour out everything and never offer you a sip when you're empty. And the worst part? You'll keep doing it. Not because you don't see it, but because you don't know how to stop. You've confused consistency with love. And now, even when it hurts, you keep showing up. Because the truth is, you'd rather break than watch them fall. There was a time I tried to pull back, not out of spite, not because I wanted to test them, I just wanted to see something simple. If I stopped reaching out, would they notice? If I disappeared for a few days, would they ask where I went? If I stopped showing up, would I matter? So I waited. 1 day passed, then 3, then a week. No messages, no calls, nothing. And that silence, it was louder than any argument I've ever had. Because it said everything. It said, you were never necessary, only convenient. It said, your effort was yours alone. And I broke. Because even when you expect the hurt, it still cuts. Even when you try to prepare yourself, there's no soft way to hear, you don't matter to them the way they matter to you. I remember checking my phone, not for a text, but for a sign that I wasn't invisible. Something. Anything. I scrolled through our old conversations like they were proof that I wasn't imagining things, that at some point they cared. Or maybe I just wanted to believe they did. The hardest part? I still missed them. Not because they treated me well, but because I gave them the best parts of me. I made memories with someone who made me feel like a placeholder. And even when I knew they wouldn't show up for me, I still wanted to show up for them. That's what loving from a lonely place does to you. You end up begging for breadcrumbs from people who feast on your loyalty and never ask if you're hungry too. There's something no one talks about, how humiliating it feels to always be the one who cares first. To always be the one typing the long message, deleting half of it, then sending something small because you don't want to scare them away. That was me. Every time I got close to saying how I really felt, I backed down. Not because I didn't mean it, but because I knew they didn't. I once wrote out a paragraph about how hurt I felt, how I was tired of being the only one holding things together. And then I deleted it, replaced it with, it's okay, I understand. And they responded with a thumbs up, a thumbs up. And I hated myself for accepting it. I think the worst part isn't when someone treats you poorly. It's when you let them. When you swallow your pain just to keep the peace. When you choose silence over truth because the truth would mean losing them. And you're still not ready for that. So you keep pretending you're okay with less. You convince yourself that one-word replies are enough. That dry conversations and canceled plans are just part of life. That their silence doesn't mean they don't care. But deep down, you know. You know this isn't love. It's endurance. It's hoping something soft will grow in a place that's never been watered. And still, you keep planting seeds with the last pieces of your heart. Because maybe, just maybe, this time will be different. Even if it never is. One time I tried to talk about it. Not in a dramatic way. Not angry, just honest. I said something like, I feel like I'm always the one showing up. I just want to feel like I matter too. And they said, you're too emotional. That's all it took. One sentence to shut the door. One sentence to make me feel like my pain was an inconvenience. And in that moment, I realized something heartbreaking. I wasn't asking for much, just to be seen, to be heard, to not feel like I had to earn basic care. But even that was too much for them. And I don't think they meant to be cruel. Most people don't, but the truth is, some people will never meet you where you are. Not because they can't, but because they don't think they should have to. They'll let you carry the weight of the relationship. Let you plan, text, call, comfort, chase, while they just exist. And because you love them, you accept it. You shrink your needs. You quiet your feelings. You trade your voice for their presence. That's what I did. I stayed. I stayed long after the part of me that believed in us started to disappear. I kept showing up even when all I got back was half effort and excuses. I gave my whole heart to someone who only ever gave me pieces. But the saddest part? I thought that was enough. Because when you've gone your whole life craving connection, even crumbs start to feel like a feast. There was this moment I still replay in my head. I was sitting across from them in a cafe. Same table we always met at. Same drink order. Same playlist humming in the background. But that day felt different. They looked distracted, bored even. Their eyes kept drifting to their phone, Their replies were short, and I felt it, the shift. I asked, "Is everything okay?" just to be sure. They smiled like I was overthinking, said, "Yeah, just tired." And I nodded. But inside, something was crumbling. Not because they were distant, but because I could feel myself trying harder just to keep their attention. I cracked a joke I didn't believe in. I asked about their day, even though they never asked about mine. I sat there, trying to be enough for someone who already decided they didn't need me in the way I needed them. And I left that cafe with a heavier heart than I came in with. That's what it's like. To love someone who wouldn't do the same, you end up performing your worth. You smile when it hurts. You give when you're empty. You love in hopes that one day they'll wake up and finally see everything you've done. But that day doesn't always come. And when it doesn't, you don't get closure. You don't get a thank you. You don't get an apology. You get silence, distance, a slow fade into used to be. And the only thing you're left holding is all the times you showed up. I used to think loyalty was everything. If I loved someone, I stayed. If they needed me, I showed up, even if it hurt, even if I had nothing left to give. I thought that's what made me a good person, my ability to love people at their worst, even when they weren't trying to be better. But I've learned loyalty without boundaries becomes self-abandonment. Because somewhere along the line, I stopped recognizing myself. I looked in the mirror and saw someone tired, someone anxious, someone who flinched when their phone lit up, wondering if today would be the day they finally text back like they used to. And it never was. I stopped writing. I stopped laughing the same. I made myself small to make them comfortable. I became easy to leave because I never made them earn my presence. And I kept telling myself I was strong, but strength isn't how much pain you can carry in silence. It's knowing when it's time to put it down. Still, I didn't. I waited. Waited for them to care. Waited for the day they'd call first. Waited for a moment that felt like everything I gave finally mattered. I waited so long I forgot what it felt like to be chosen. And the worst part? They never asked me to wait. I did that all on my own. I stayed loyal to a version of them that only existed in my mind. One where they'd see my worth, where they'd match my effort, where they'd finally show up. But in real life, they never did. And I kept calling that love, and I kept. You know what's strange? It wasn't even the big things that broke me. Not the fights, not the endings. It was the little things. The way they never remembered the songs I loved. The way they left my messages unread when I was trying to hold myself together. The way I could be falling apart and still, they'd talk about their day like nothing was wrong. It's the way they made me feel like I was asking for too much, when all I wanted was to matter. I remember one night I told them I wasn't doing well. I didn't even explain it all. I just said, "Hey, I'm not okay today." And they replied, "I'm sorry to hear that," and went offline. That was it. That was their version of showing up. And I stared at that message for too long, thinking, maybe I am too much. But deep down, I knew I wasn't too much. I was just too available for someone who only gave me the leftovers of their attention. I was spilling my heart into a glass they never intended to hold. And I wonder, how many people out there feel this exact kind of lonely? The kind where you're surrounded by people but still feel invisible. The kind where you keep giving and no one even thinks to ask, "Are you okay?" Because when you're the strong one, the caring one, the one who always shows up, people start to believe you don't need anything. But you do. You really do. And some days, the silence from those you love hurts more than any goodbye. One day I just stopped. Stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes. Stopped thinking of the perfect reply to people who barely said anything. Stopped pouring my heart into empty hands. And it wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was just quiet. Like the moment after a storm, when you finally realize the sky's been clear for a while, but you're still bracing for rain. I didn't stop because I stopped caring. I stopped because I finally understood this. Showing up for people who never show up for you doesn't make you loyal. It makes you lonely. And I've been lonely long enough. I thought love was sacrifice, that if I loved hard enough, long enough, patiently enough, they'd come around. But love isn't about staying no matter what. It's about being seen, heard, valued, without having to beg for it. So I walked away, not with bitterness, not to prove a point, just with the quiet sadness of someone who gave everything and finally realized it wasn't coming back. And if you're still there, still waiting, still hoping, still showing up for someone who wouldn't notice if you stopped, I want you to know something. You deserve more. Not just love, but love that chooses you. Love that shows up for you on the hard days. Love that doesn't need reminders or explanations or silence soaked in pain. You don't have to prove you're worthy by staying. You already are. And if no one's told you that lately, let this be your reminder. You matter, even when they don't see it, especially then.